When in doubt. Hello, everyone out there watching this channel. That's probably like, what, 15 people? Anyways, glad you're here. Maybe you've said the words before, I'll sleep when I'm dead, or maybe even you've taken a lot of pride of staying up tremendous amounts of hours working, or maybe you even praise others who are like, man, they just like never sleep and they're always working. We very much cherish the idea of not sleeping nowadays. We spend a third of our lives in this state of unconsciousness. Or we even praise those and glorify them to the idea that they don't sleep. Today, hopefully I can get you to glorify that a little bit less, but more importantly, value the idea of sleep just a little bit more. It doesn't really sound very fascinating, but if you think about it, like over time, the one thing that nature has made sure that we've kept, it is the idea that for a third of our lives, we're going to be laying down in a vulnerable position, disconnected from the conscious world, just so that for the next 6 to 8 hours, our bodies are doing something, right? And sometimes that idea of not being able to actually see what the body is doing might lead to some notions or myths or ideas out there that you're essentially doing nothing. And then that can be a whole nother episode for tying that along with laziness, things for another episode. So put down that cup of coffee, especially if it's after 3 p.m. In your time zone, and switch over to some uncaffeinated tea. I recommend chamomile. And
let's dive in.
You may know I'm a psychiatrist, so on my end, there's always this idea of, doc, I need something to help me sleep. And I usually respond with, you need routine, melatonin, and to put away your phone. I'd say that tongue in cheek because I'm not the best at that either, right? Those are things we'll touch on a little bit later called sleep hygiene. But more than anything else, I want to talk about the consequences of the lack of sleep. So let me take you into this world. Again, the first idea is we are really bad at knowing how much sleep we've had and how much sleep debt that we might owe our bodies, or like how much sleep will need to be a quote unquote what we consider to be optimal, right? You can keep losing enough sleep, and over time, there's something called sleep debt, and your body will just eventually sleep. And then you wake up and you might repeat the same cycle, and you might be sleep deprived for a while. It really is the idea of the frog boiling in hot water, right? Where if you put a frog in water and you turn on the heat and the water slowly heats up until it boils, and like the frog just doesn't notice until like something breaks or something happens or it dies. Now it really makes me wonder like who was the one who actually tried that. And again, I am not your doctor. Please do not take this as your formal medical advice. This is really all educational and really to help you guide maybe some of those conversations you've had with your own doc, right? But I am in no way giving you medical advice. Hopefully I'm also not wasting your time. All right, first rule of thumb. You can't live without sleep. That's the first thing, right? So am I talking about your heart beating, your organs still being perfused with blood? If that's the only thing you consider as living, then are folks in a coma living, right? I didn't mean to get so dark there. But the idea behind that is that there's that other component as well, where there's your physical body, but then there's your conscious mind as well, right? Everything you're seeing on the screen right now, right, has to go through your eyes to hit a part of your brain, and then your brain's like interpreting what part of this world there is right now, because I'm gonna remind you that your brain lives in like a dark little skull and it can't really see anything other than the fact that it's connected to everything else in our bodies here. There are a few things out there that correlate with less sleep, such as less life. Comorbidities or conditions out there that are predisposed because of not enough sleep include heart disease, cardiovascular diseases, such as having a ischemic infarct in your brain called a stroke. Or there's the idea that there's a long correlation with developing neurocognitive disorders, also called dementia. Last but not least, I value sleep quite a bit because it can lead to a lot of psychiatric conditions. At the end of the day, if you boil down the DSM-5, right, like there are generally two uncomfortable bases it sits on, or there are two general sensations that folks usually default to, and it's anxiety and depression. You're probably like, oh God, another one of these docs, so this is all they're gonna talk about. Well, I'm saying it's very important because those are the two that can easily be pointed out as to getting much worse when our sleep is getting worse. So I care for it quite a bit because let's say you come into my office and you're telling me, hey doc, I haven't been feeling good. I've been having less energy. It's really, really hard for me to get the same joy I do out of life and the hobbies that I usually would do, whether it's, tennis, hanging out with friends and playing board games. What is it that people do nowadays? Pickleball. I just don't get the same amount of joy out of doing it, right? Like if it was at a 9 before, now it's like barely a 4 or 5, and it's getting really hard. And I know it's not my friends. I love them, and I know it's not the sport because I enjoy it, I enjoyed it in the moment previously. I've also noticed that I've only been getting like 3 to 4 hours of sleep. And then in my mind, I was like, oh, here's a situation of the chicken or the egg, right? This isn't to say conditions like depression or anxiety doesn't lead to insomnia or lack of sleep. And this isn't also to say that insomnia in itself doesn't lead to worsening anxiety or depression. So I usually like to address both, right? But if you come in and you let me know that, hey, for the insomnia side, I am drinking 5 energy drinks a day and they're all after 3 p.m. And I wake up at noon, but I also take naps at 2 p.m. And in the evening, I decide to take a large meal before I go to bed. And there is noise everywhere. I leave my television on while I'm trying to sleep. And my dog just keeps nudging at me every hour to get up to go to the bathroom. I didn't want to make that too personal there. And in my mind, the lowest hanging fruit out of all of that is the idea that we try to optimize that as much as possible. Now, this isn't to say that it's going to be one thing, right? It's not going to be like, oh, if I just go to sleep at like 9 p.m. every night, the world's going to be completely fixed. No. Or if you just refer me to a therapist, all of this will be fixed. Well, I mean, potentially if it's a really good therapist, right? You gotta find the right fit. Or it's not going to be, oh, if you just prescribe for me this one antidepressant, or, oh, if you just prescribe to me this one medication that is a sleep aid. There are a number of factors that go into sleep itself, right? I hope I can drive that point home more than anything else, just because I think sometimes when folks walk into the office, they're looking for, oh, it's just this one thing, right? I really wish psychiatry or mental health or behaviors or how we interact with the world and things like such as sleep is something like infectious disease, where if you have like a blood infection, they'll draw some blood, and then they'll culture it onto a little petri dish, and they'll put it underneath a microscope, and then they'll be like, oh, that looks like X, Y, and Z. And we have another plate that we've tested a number of antibiotics on, and we see that, oh, we can use X, Y, and Z to help you kill off this bug, right? I really wish it was like a one-for-one thing. Unfortunately, for us, I think the most we have is your report, sometimes a really good sleep log, your report, and how you respond to your mood and things like that. right? Yeah, I guess there are medications out there that can really just get you to go to sleep pretty quickly. But then the question becomes, is that what we want to be doing every night? Maybe for some that is the answer, but I can't say that's the answer for most. So let me drive that home first, okay? There are a number of factors, right? Time of day, mood, stressors, how cold it is in your room, how not cold it is in your room, anybody else that shares a bed with you, or any of your fur babies that share the bed with you, work schedule, your own sleep schedule and routine, how many screens you're exposed to the hour before you go to bed, and the consistency of when your eyes open for the day, what you do throughout the day, and how you go back to dreamland, right? It's like this oscillation of disconnect and reconnect to reality, that the more consistent it is, right? Because the world happens in cycles, right? And so do our days. And with that, maybe I'll get into like melatonin more a little bit later, but to keep that rhythm, right? That's like my first recommendation for anyone, for everyone. Maybe I'll touch back on as to like more in-depth details as to what medications do to us when we sleep, or if you have any other questions that you think I can definitely go over, do let me know. I'm always for a good rant about things, right? I guess I know things. And if you're watching this to try to fall asleep in bed, don't worry, compliments received, especially if you're already sleeping. But if not,